This is titled, The Oldest Trick in the Book, is what this sermon is titled. It is part 2 of a potentially 8-part series that I've been writing. And hopefully, by the grace of God, it'll be something I'll present in more places than one. The reason why, I didn't even tell you what the series was on. It's on courtship. Courtship and not marriage yet, because I haven't been married long enough for that. But eventually, maybe it will be on marriage as well. But courtship, because this is something that's very important to my testimony specifically. And it's something that I did learn actually, but it was after I was too stubborn to learn the first time. That's my fault though. And thank those folks over there for helping me in that process. And there we go. So it's titled The Oldest Trick in the Book. And the reason why is because so many people fall in what we're about to talk about. And now, I just told you it was a courtship series, and some of you have been married like 3 times longer than I've been alive, and so you're like, what does this have to do with me? Well, if you know someone who is planning to get married, have any children, know a single soul in general, or would like to counsel maybe grandchildren, this is for you. So I think that covers just about everybody here, which is if you interact with someone who has a potential to get married, this is for you. And so, to introduce this, we're going to find the oldest trick in the book in this book called The Pilgrim's Progress. Pilgrim's Progress is an amazing Christian book. Let me move this real quick. And written by John Bunyan, and has converted thousands of people, including myself. And it was actually my sister over there who gave me this copy that you're looking at right now, the book The Pilgrim's Progress. And so the background of The Pilgrim's Progress is all based on the pilgrim, and his name is Christian. And he is going down a journey to make it to the celestial city, which is heaven. It's an allegory, so there's much symbolism in this book, right? I forgot to pray. Let's pray, and then we'll keep going. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for another Sabbath day, Lord. Thank you for the opportunity and the privilege to stand here before your people, Lord. I ask that you remove any words that may come from me, any thoughts that may be mine, and only give yours. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen. So this is following the pilgrim's journey. And Christian meets people along the way. He meets obstacles. He meets very beautiful things. And in particular, where we're going to pick up the story, he meets someone called the interpreter. And the interpreter is what you would now consider potentially a minister or an instructor, right? And this interpreter has a place called the interpreter's house. In the interpreter's house, Christian is walked through many different rooms that have lessons for him to learn. And so we're going to pick up in a lesson that he brought him to in one of the rooms. And this is what it says. We'll pick up right where the book says. It says, "Then the interpreter took him into a chamber where stood 2 women. The name of one was Prudence, which is wisdom, and the name of the other was Piety, or devotion. And the wanton woman that thou sawest is called Madam Wanton." That's what we're going to be focusing on today. "And she is the lust of the flesh. She loveth to defile herself, and loveth to draw others to the same excess of riot." So this is the interpreter speaking to Christian, warning him, giving him a lesson in this room, and says there's 2 women, or 3. One is prudence and wisdom, the other one is piety. And he says, but there's another that I want you to pay attention to, and that is Madam Wanton. Then Christian said, "I perceive that this is a true saying. They that are after the flesh do mind the things of the flesh, but they that are after the Spirit, the things of the Spirit." So, Christian learned from this one room that there are many paths someone can take. There are many things that someone can try to ascribe to themselves and take. 2 of those things were good. 1 of those was bad and deceptive. And he wanted him to pay attention to this. And in Puritan theology, which John Bunyan was, often they give you a bright, shining example of what the sin or the temptation is, and then they expect you to be able to recognize it later on. That's our job, to recognize it later on. So, the key point from what we just talked about is that the lust of the flesh is in the personage of this woman, Madam Wanton. And if any of us is supposed to make it to the kingdom of heaven, we have to be very wary of her, because she is very sly and deceptive. So the first question we have is, how does Madam Wanton show herself or manifest herself. We're going to do what Puritan theology often asks us to do, which is use our mind to figure out where this temptation may pop up. Galatians chapter 5, verse 19 through 21 says, "Now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, and heresies." This is a long list. And it says, "envyings, murderers, drunkenness, revelings, and such like, of the which I tell you before, as I have told you also told you in the time past, that they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of God." So Madame Wanton does not show up in one form. There's quite a few number of forms here that we have to pay attention to. But for today's sake, and for a series on courtship's sake, I think we can guess which one we're going to be focused on, but it's going to be 3, more or less. The first one is adultery. This is in the Ten Commandments. It is abundantly clear. It's the principle for everything else that we're going to talk about. Adultery in Exodus 20:14. We won't go there, but it says, "Thou shalt not commit adultery." And the next one is fornication. This is 1 Corinthians 6:18. These are all references you can go to later on, but this will describe another form of this principle that is adultery that we'll be talking about, lust of the flesh. And the last one, which is the more slick one that comes across, Jesus gives us a perfect example of in Matthew 5:28, which is lust in your mind. And Jesus says, "But I say unto you that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart." The reason why I have chosen this to be part of a courtship series, or why are we talking about this in a courtship series, is because there is a perfect way. And there is a way that you're intended to do things. But this is the avenue that the devil has tried to kill so many people spiritually and physically, however you'd like to choose. So our job is to put our glasses on, put our thinking hats on, and do what we are called to do, and keep our eyes wide open to watch out for this Madame Wanton. So, question 2. How have lust and fornication been used as the devil's trap? Because we just said that it is there. How? This is abundantly important to recognize where it comes from. How has it been used in the past? Number 1, we talked about Samson. Last time I preached was, I think, about a month ago. But Samson was, as many may know or may not know, the strongest man to ever live. He is the epitome of a man. And yet he fell because of the lust of the flesh led him to deny his God, to deny his faith, and to lead him away from Christ. And it robbed his gift. The next one is the Israelites. And it was used, this lust of the flesh was used to degrade a nation, and not just one time. But Numbers 25, 1 through 3 gives that example, and it tells us when they went to go, and it says, "And the Israel abode in Shittim, and the people began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab. They called the people unto the sacrifices of their gods, and the people did eat and bowed down to their gods." So because of this sin, the people of God were called to bow down before idols, which is obviously and clearly the devil's goal for all of us. That is his end goal, is to get us all to bow down to something. It may not be a golden calf, but it is him or whatever else we may put in front of us. The last one is the sons of God. And it's mixing the godly with the worldly. So maybe not every time will you go and fully run into idolatry and all these different things, but sometimes the devil just wants to muddy the waters a little bit. And Genesis chapter 6, verse 2 through 3 makes this clear as well, as an example of the times that the devil has, or how the devil sets his traps, right? Genesis 2, I guess it's 2 through 4, but I think it's just 2. That the sons of God saw that the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. That last part is very important. They chose. And so this is how the devil sets his trap. It is many ways. It is an individual. He'll send a whole bunch of people. He'll cause you to lose your gift. He'll cause you to bow down to idols, or he'll just muddy your waters, right? So there are just abundance of examples of this happening in the Bible. We could be here all day just talking about this. But instead, we're going to jump to the next question, which says, what warnings has God given to us about this specific temptation? Because God is merciful. He knows that we have things that are going to be tempted us every single second of our lives until he comes back. And so he so graciously warns us all the time. And he does that in many different forms. So what warnings has God given to us about this specific temptation, lust of the flesh in the form of Madame Wanton, which is fornication and idolatry, or adultery? The first one is it destroys the soul. Proverbs 6:23 tells you that this sin will corrupt you from the inside out, but it will start in here. And this is seen all the time. Jesus just said it in the verse that we said, but we'll get there later. The next warning he has given to us comes from Proverbs chapter 7. It deceptively leads people astray. It's not always the brightest thing shining. Oftentimes it's clothed in a garb that you can't really see. It says in Proverbs 7, starting actually in verse 25, it says, "Let not thine heart decline to her ways, and go not astray in her paths. Many strong men have been slain by her, and her house is the way to hell." So this is warning us not only that she has deceptive, sly past that she wants us to walk down, but that none of us could be strong enough to stand it on our own. And this last one comes in the form of a verse. It is 2 Timothy 2:22, which says, "Flee also youthful lusts, but follow righteousness, faith, charity, peace with them that call on the Lord out of a pure heart." And I highlighted the first word there because that is the warning. Flee. Again, will be very important as we start to build our understanding of this topic. So, there are many things that we have to be aware of. And there are many warnings that he has given us. And so now, I want to break down and show certain mechanisms that God has given us, because we're talking at the moment about courtship. And not everything to do with courtship can be bad. There is some level of understanding. Not everything in marriage can be bad. Not everything that has to do with the topic of what we're talking about is bad. So the question is, God gave us natural mechanisms for forming a marriage, correct? For building upon it, for creating it, for it to grow and to just flourish. But there's a specific time and a place for these mechanisms. But first, before we go into that, we want to find out what they are. What has God given us to build relationships, right? The first one is words. Words are so important. Words are everything. What I tell you means a lot. What I do says more. But what I tell you means a lot. The last one is touch. Touch is extremely important. If I got married and never touched my wife, I don't think I would be married. I don't think that's how that works. Not even friendships work that way. If I just was a friend and I was just like, hey, and never ever shook his hand, gave him a hug, whatever it may be, something would be wrong. These are natural things that God has given us to form relationships. It is very, very true. And the last one is proximity, or time together. Without time, you don't really have anything. Time is everything. Time means, and that's why we're here on this specific day, because God set time for us to spend with him. So these three things, and I'm sure there may be more, are foundational for building a true godly marriage relationship or any relationship. But there are levels to this, as we're going to understand. And the first one I want to understand in the context of a courtship, I want to understand the power of the things that we're going to talk about, right? The power of these three things. The first one is words. And this is a quote from the Journal of Language and Social Psychology and the website at the end of that. It says, positive affirmations, love or peace or whatever word you may say, build strong bonds. And romantic novels use words of arousal and passion, suggesting specific vocabulary can even ignite desire. So there's power in the words that you say. Lots of power in the words that you say. What about touch? It says inter-individual touch can be a desirable reward that can both relieve negative effect and evoke strong feelings of pleasure. And this is all different kinds of things. When someone hugs you, it releases something in your body called oxytocin. And that is what they call the love hormone or the pleasure hormone. It's not always a marriage-related thing. Oftentimes it's just nice. They've done studies on people who the difference between when someone has any sort of physical contact versus not is huge. As it says, it can even relieve depression. Just a hug. And I think we can all feel that. When we're really feeling down and someone just gives us a hug, we can feel those things happening whether or not we understand that it was oxytocin or not. We can see the power of these things, right? And there's the quote or the reference at the bottom of that as well. And the last one that we talked about was time together. This one is huge. This one is everything. Proximity. One of the key factors influencing the development of romantic attraction is proximity. When people are physically close to one another, the chances of naturally encountering and interacting with each other increase. Proximity not only refers to physical closeness, but also how frequently our paths cross with someone, how often we see them, and to the degree which we are exposed to them. It offers individuals the opportunity to get to know one another and to discover shared similarities. You may or may not have heard this, but I've heard this, that you basically marry someone from wherever you are at. I can't marry someone all the way in South Africa because I've never been there. So wherever you are is where you form your relationships, where you build a community, where you build a family and a life. So these three things are God-given mechanisms for building relationships. Without them, you don't have any relationship. You don't even have familial relationships with these things, without these things, right? And so all these can all fall under the umbrella of natural affection, right? Familiarity, things that are good in the right place in the right time. So, what does the devil do with God's created mechanisms for intimacy, for interaction, for love, for building relationships? Because the devil is not very good at creating. He doesn't create anything, actually. He is just a sly, slick forger. But he's pretty good at that one. So he doesn't create anything. He couldn't even create this mic if I asked him to. He takes anything that God has designed and he just warps it a little bit and changes it and turns it into something that is disgusting and used only for death anyways. But the devil's very good at that. So he's taken these mechanisms and he's changed them. And he's warped them. And he's put them in the wrong place at the wrong time. And he's put them in places and in ways that create things in you that you may not fully understand. But they are there and they're very real. What does the Bible say about what the devil does with these natural mechanisms, right? James chapter 1, verse 13 through 16. It says, "Let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man." All right, that's the principle. God doesn't tempt anyone with these natural mechanisms. They are very, as I keep saying, natural. And so they're going to happen in the right place in the right time. He doesn't tempt anyone to do something outside of his will. But every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. So when that starts to come into the equation, when these natural mechanisms meet the lust of the flesh, then something else happens. It says, when lust hath conceived, it bringeth forth sin. And sin, when it is finished, it bringeth forth death. Do not err, my beloved brethren. So these natural things are not wrong. They're amazing. They're beautiful. They're foundational. But when the devil adds in his little twist to them, all of a sudden your mind switches from something pure and holy and something called lust enters into your mind. And when that thing called lust enters into your mind, you start to feel and see and think different things that you should not think, and it conceives something in your mind called sin. And I enjoy this verse. Let me go back. Because it says, it bringeth forth sin. It doesn't say, if it might bring forth sin. That, when it has conceived, when that thought, temptations are not wrong. Temptations come all the time. Jesus was tempted. The temptation is not a sin. It's what you do with the temptation that makes it a sin or not. So when that has conceived, when you've decided to take that thing that was not yours, some demon put that thing in your mind to lust after the flesh, and when you take that thing and you make it yours, you say, okay, I'm going to hold on to this temptation called lust. It conceives something in your mind, and it brings forth sin. There's no way about it. If you choose to keep your eyes on something you shouldn't be looking at, it will bring forth sin. You can choose to say, well, it's only a couple seconds. Oh, it's only this amount of time. It doesn't matter. It will come out. And it says, when it is finished, it bringeth forth death. And it is a promise of God that if you hold on to the lust of the flesh, it will result in death. There is no questions about it. And Paul gives us that loving warning and says, do not err, my beloved brethren. And this is why Jesus said, you've heard that it was said in old time, thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say unto you that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery already in his heart. Because he's telling you this principle, that when it starts here, it's going to go there, however you want it to come about. He's giving us this exact principle that James has written here. So the devil understands more than any of us what steps are required to build a connection with somebody. He knows that front and back. And so he's used this and he's slipped in one thing there, and it's called lust. And with that, he does quite a number of different things, and each and every one of them brings forth sin, right? There's a quote here that is, I think, a very good quote in reference to what we're going to talk about, what we're talking about. It says, as long as life shall last, there is need of guarding the affections and the passions with a firm purpose. As long as life shall last, there is need for guarding these things. Why? Because it's like eating almost. You're not human if you don't have touch and words and proximity. You're not human if you don't have those. So they are natural, and so they need to be protected. The same way temperance in what you eat has to be protected, because every day you got to eat. So out of all things that need to be protected, you can cut some things off. I can stop doing drugs or drinking alcohol or doing this or that. I can cut that off. I can't cut off eating. So because it has to be with me every day of my life, I need to guard it with a firm purpose. It says there is inward corruption and there are outward temptations. And wherever the work of God shall be advanced, Satan plans so to arrange circumstances that temptations shall come with overpowering force upon the soul. Not one moment can we be secure, only as we are relying upon God, the life hid with Christ in God. I have studied with so many people who we start the study, and man, we start off strong. We're learning all these different things, study after study after study. Everything is going amazing. They've just learned all these new truths. I'm like, hey, man, they're going so fast, we might get baptized soon. That doesn't always happen. But what does almost always happen is that right in the middle, I get a text. Like, hey, guess what? I'm like, what? And they say, oh, I met this person. I got a girlfriend. I got a boyfriend. I got this. I got that. And I have learned that to me, it says, oh, okay, we won't be doing studies for the next couple months. Every time. Whenever I get that text, I know what to expect. Because the devil it's the oldest trick in the book for a reason. It's because it works. It's because he'll just slide that in there. And because we're so stubborn and we're so blind, it keeps working. I can't tell you how many times this foolish sin has worked in my life. And all he did was unwrap it, put it in a new package, maybe put a bow, and then send it right back to me. And I opened it. But God, when we're hid in him, protects us from those things. This quote here says, and this is Ellen White, Counsel to a Young Woman. It's in, I believe it's in Letters to Young Lovers or one of the books. It says, I would warn you to be guarded as to where you bestow your affections. Remember that your life belongs to Jesus, and that you are not to live for yourself alone. Everything you are belongs to him. Every gift that you have ever had in your life that you may think you're great at this or that or whatever it may be, you may think you're not great, but you have something because God gave it to you. Everything in your life belongs to him, including who you choose to give your affections to. Do not live for yourself alone. Okay, so does that mean that you can never speak to anyone outside of your family? Is that what I'm saying? You should never, ever, ever talk to anyone. Stay in your room. Never go out. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. There's a difference between a deep and loving friendship and a relationship and a marriage. And I don't think, I'm not doing rocket science here by telling you guys that there's a difference. There's a little something, there's a little spark that happens in you that is both chemical and spiritual that changes the switch from deep bond, friendship, brother, sister, whatever it may be, to relationship, marriage relationship. And I could give you all the science about what it is, but I don't have to. We all know what it is. Because when I go and I say, hey, Hank, how you doing? I give Hank a big hug. We're brothers. But if I did that same thing to my wife, like, hey, Emmeline, how you doing? And it's brothers, we'd be like, what are you doing? Because there's something there that was given by God. But when that is given over to the devil, it does whatever it chooses to do. So, let every step toward a marriage alliance, because that's what courtship is. That is the definition. That's what keep in mind, I haven't said dating one time. Why? Because everybody in the world has something that they ascribe to dating that I don't ascribe to. Dating is not what we do as Christians. Because the world says dating is just, have a little fun. Might be dating someone for 3 months and then might never talk to them for the rest of my life. Dating is fun, is what they call it. But really, it's just trying to dip your toe in the water and not commit to anything ever. And that's not what we do, because there's a purpose in bestowing those affections, correct? The purpose of that is what it just says. It says every step towards marriage. So before we talk about anything to do with marriage, if you're ready for marriage or not, that question should be the first thing to be asked. If the answer is no, we can stop the study right now. We'll do it later. Or maybe you should listen right now anyways. But it's so important for us to realize that courtship is the pure, beautiful, designed gift from God to bring two people from two different walks of life to know each other in such a beautiful, deep way, and then to eventually say, I want to give my life to you. And the other person says, I want to give my life to you as well. And then you make that decision and that covenant in front of God, and you have a beautiful relationship. Now, the divorce rate in the United States is something like 50%. Because everyone has been treating dating or courtship like shaking hands. And that is not what this is. You characterize it by modesty and simplicity and sincerity and an earnest purpose to please and to honor God. I don't see anything here about what I want. Because what I often want is not good for me. It says marriage affects the afterlife, both in this world and in the world to come. And that's another series that we will talk about, which is being unequally yoked. But a sincere Christian will make no plans that God cannot approve. Make Christ your counselor. Study his word with prayer. No plans that God cannot approve. And again, apply this. If you have kids, apply this. If you are an adult, apply this. If you know anyone who will be struggling with these things, with this, just about everybody, apply this to them. Teach them, share it. Let them know the gravity of what they are doing. It says the afterlife, both in this world and in the world to come. In Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot and his wife and his daughters made it out. One turned back and didn't make it that far. But Lot had other family in that city. Lot had other daughters, or whatever it may be, in that city. And they didn't make it out. Why? Because they chose to put themselves in allegiance with someone who affected their afterlife, both in this world and in the world to come, and they pushed them to stay there, and maybe they even wanted to stay there, because they bound themselves up with someone who did not care about anything to do with the love of God. No plans that God cannot approve. This mechanism of simplicity and modesty and sincerity and protecting yourself and guarding your affections is a protection and a barrier from something that we may not even understand yet. And we're going to by the end of this. But there is something there, that demon of lust, that desire is something that we don't fully understand. And I told you the devil was a terrible forger. But if you decide to step to him on your own, he is greater than anything you can ever imagine. Question 6. What is the result of those who do not obey? Listen, I didn't say hear. I said obey the warning given by the Bible and the spirit of prophecy. What is the result? Blindness is the most clear one we can think of. We've heard you may have heard the phrase, love is blind. Love is not blind. Lust is blind. Lust is very blind. Love that comes from God is not blind. Because you loved God when you walked into this church and said, I want to know him more. And you made a clear decision to choose him. But when lust comes into the picture, you don't make that same decision. All of a sudden, things are a little foggy. Things are muddy now. You start to compromise a little bit. And I promise you, not many people have tried to compromise to get into church. People are trying to run out of church. Not many people are trying to do that and sacrifice those different things for God. So I have a picture here of David. And if you know who that prophet is, that's Nathan. And the story of David and Bathsheba, if you do not know, is that David, this king, this great king, this handsome guy, he had everything in the world. He sees out of his window and he sees Bathsheba taking a bath. And he decides, instead of turning his head and saying, whoa, I wasn't supposed to see that. Let me focus on God instead. Let me go read my Bible. Let me get some help. He lingers a little bit, right? And he makes the decision to not only commit adultery with another man's wife, but that lust turned into something, and that conceived in his mind, it turned into sin, and then we said it brings forth death, right? Well, David wasn't the one that died from that sin. He brought his close soldier Uriah the Hittite home and tried to get him to sleep with his wife. Because he wanted to deceive Uriah into thinking that Bathsheba, after she got pregnant, after he committed adultery, that was his baby. Now we know it wasn't. And Uriah, as a good, godly man that he was, refused to lie with his wife. He said, why would I go lie with my wife when all my friends and my soldiers are out there fighting? Send me back. And David tried to get him drunk. Didn't work. David tried as much as he could to get this man and to deceive this man. David was a great king. David and Goliath, right? He wasn't always blind. Something was changing his mind. And when he sends Uriah off back into battle, he sends him with a piece of paper. And in that paper, when he hands it to his commander reads it, and it says, put Uriah the Hittite in the front of the battle, and when it really gets hot, pull out and leave him there. Because he knew that he would die right there. And David wasn't even man enough to kill him himself. And David is so blind, when he gets the news that Uriah is dead, he's just cool. And he doesn't even realize what has become of his life and his decisions. But then Nathan the prophet comes, and he gives him a story. He tells him that there are two men. One has all the sheep in the world that you could imagine. He has everything. And the other one has just one. And he loves this sheep. And it's a beautiful sheep. And he's taking care of it from when he was young to now. It is all that he had. And he said that man with everything who was rich, when he wanted to go ahead and kill something, he took that one sheep. He took that one sheep that the man had, when he had everything he could have wanted, and he took it for himself. And David, in his rage, says that man needs to die and pay for what he did. Fourfold, repay fourfold. And Nathan looks him dead in the eye and says, you are that man. Because he took the one thing Uriah had, that faithful man, when he had the whole kingdom. He says, if what I gave you was not enough, this is God speaking to David, if what I gave you was not enough, I would have given you more. But lust is blind. Lust doesn't realize who loves you more than anything in the world. Lust doesn't take into account that one decision may lead you down a path that you have no idea where it's going. I tell people this all the time. We have a question about free will, right? People always say, well, they always ask me about free will. Well, do you really have free will if you're with God? All that stuff. And I say, you have two choices in life. There's no gray area. You either choose to serve God or you choose to serve the devil. Because both forces are so much more powerful than yours, but you keep your free will with one of those choices. When you come to God, He takes you, He accepts you. He was trying to get you there the whole time. He changes you, and He says, I will give you your choice to leave me whenever you want. But because you love me and because I love you, I want you here forever. Now, when you make the decision to go to the devil and you ask him and you give your life over to him, he says, okay, thanks, great. And you can kiss goodbye your free ability to have a clear mind and to choose, because every single step from then on is him trying to add strings to your arms and to your legs and to use you as a puppet. So you had your free will to choose him. But everything after that, you are quickly losing grip on your ability to choose. Because if David chose that one sin with Bathsheba, do we really think that David, when he made that decision, wanted to murder Uriah the Hittite? I don't think so. David was a good man. But something blinded him, took control of his mind, and puppeteered him to commit sin against God. And there's a verse here that I think applies to this very clearly and applies to the depth of the results of our sins. Exodus 34, verse 7. It says, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, and that will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children and upon the children's children and unto the third and to the fourth generation. Some of you may be thinking, maybe he's referencing that to the fact that the child that came out of adultery died. And that is very true. But I'm actually thinking of somebody else. Because David had an issue with this Madam Wanton. He had an issue with this lust of the flesh. And it fostered itself in him time and time again. And that demon that was in him was passed to his sons. It was passed to Absalom. It was passed to, I forget his other son's name, but who took advantage of his own sister. That demon rampaged in his house. And if your father, or your father's father, or your father's father has struggled with any sin, be wary of it. There's something called epigenetics that is just purely science that says if someone was an addict, then their children are more likely to be addicts. My father, his grandfather, or his dad, was an addict. So he was more likely to be an addict, and therefore so am I. David was an addict to the demon of lust and gave his life over to that, so therefore his sons were the same thing. Solomon was a great man. He started out so strong. I pray that prayer every day, Lord, if you would just give me the wisdom and the understanding of Solomon, I would do so much for you and for your kingdom. But Solomon allowed that to corrupt him and to change him, and that same little demon that was hiding in the back, while he was faithful, while he was strong, it was just waiting for an opportunity to come through, resulted in 700 wives and 300 concubines and a nation of idolatry. So it says, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children's children, and to the third and the fourth generations. So our decisions today impact the decisions of our children later. It says, a little time spent in sowing your wild oats, as every single new age and every single university age, high school, college student is trying to do. They handshake when they exchange the intimacy that is only meant for marriage. Dear young friends, will produce a crop that will embitter your whole life. An hour of thoughtlessness, once yielding to temptation, may turn your whole current of your life in the wrong direction. You have but one youth. Make that useful. And when you have passed over the ground, you can never return to rectify your mistakes. Now, does that say you can't come to God? No, it doesn't. You can come to him. You can beg for forgiveness. You can ask him to save you, and he will. But there's something called scar tissue. And that means when you get cut, it may heal, but you will forever have the scar tissue of the things that you have decided to choose. You can never remove those. Only Christ can when he comes back. He who refuses to connect with God and puts himself in the way of temptation will surely fall. God is testing every youth. I am not saying that out of a lack of experience. I'm telling you that because every day of my life, from 10 years old to forever, was a test. It's not God was testing me, but the devil is always trying to attack us. And God knows that we can get through it. So he will allow certain temptations because he knows that by him, you're strong enough to overcome them. But he is. And the devil hates the youth. He hates them so much because he knows that a young person can do so much more than someone who's older. Now, did I say old people can't do anything? That's not what I said. I said a young person can do more. Why? Because their bones don't ache. They can go canvass that whole neighborhood for the next 6 hours and be just fine. Then go do it again the next day. The young people can do great things, and the devil knows that. Why do you think all the media, all the music, all the temptations are directed at the youth? Question 7. Now, I wrote this question because it's something I've thought in my own head. I said, but I mean, I can take care of it. I can control. I got it. I think I've told my mom that. As long as I decide not to go beyond the point that I know I shouldn't go, I'll be all right. That's what we all think. What does some quotes here say? It says, do not see how close you can walk upon the brink of a precipice and be safe. Now, I don't like heights. Hank knows I don't like heights. We were working together and we were getting on just a 2-story building and I thought I was going to die. I was like gripping onto the shingles. I didn't want to come off that thing. I don't like heights. And the reason why is because I know that there's something waiting for me at the bottom of that drop. And my bones may not enjoy it. And so it says, don't see how close you can walk on the edge of a precipice and be safe. It says, because there's someone there to push you over. Keep that in mind. Avoid the first approach to danger. The soul's interest cannot be trifled with. Your capital is your character. Everything is your character. That's the only thing. I think Carl tonight and other people have said this as well. The only thing you're taking to heaven is your character and somebody with you. Cherish it as you would a golden treasure. Moral purity, self-respect, a strong power of resistance. Lord, if I had only had that sooner, must be firmly and constantly cherished, and that is a promise. Every unholy passion must be kept under the control of sanctified reason. That is everything. Reason of the world will lead you to do whatever you want. Sanctified reason protects you and guards you and leads you down a path to the celestial city, to the kingdom of heaven. Without that, good luck. Through the grace abundantly bestowed of God in every emergency, but let no arrangement be made to create an emergency. Man, I don't know how to tell you how many times I have sat down and planned and arranged and called up and said, all right, we're going to arrange an emergency for me to need to call on help of God. Let there be no voluntary act to place one where he will be assailed with temptation or give the least occasion for, this is so important, for others to think him guilty of indiscretion. It's not only to protect yourself and to protect the person you're with, but to protect everyone else from thinking whatever you're doing is okay. Who you are as people who decide to live for God is greater than you. It's beyond you. Don't give others the least occasion to think that a sinful action is representative of your God. So the question of, well, I can take care of it. I can do it. I have got it all taken care of. We have talked a little bit about it. I've mentioned it once or twice, but we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. We understand that. And we've seen a whole list of examples of men sinning against God and what that has turned into. There's a specific letter that was written from Ellen White to a man. And this man was struggling with what we call the demon of lust. The demon that attacks your mind and gives you thoughts that aren't yours. That puts things in your brain that leads you down a path that you don't even know where it's going. What did she say to counsel this man? She said, in your letter, you have stated your inability to put these evil things out of your mind. At least he recognizes that. He says, I can't do this. Will you then, by your sinful propensity, bring other minds into the slavery of sin? You have a responsibility to save souls, not bring them into captivity with you. Will you give them the apples of Sodom? Will you arouse in them the demon of lust? That person that you may love so dearly or think you know the definition of love so dearly may not have struggled with the demon of lust. They may have come from a good home. They may have had good values. But when you choose to allow your sinful propensity to enter into their life, you're gifting them in a beautiful little package, a demon of lust. It says, shall they be placed where temptation is too strong for them to overcome? Shall their souls be tainted and polluted by unholy practices? Will you fasten poor souls in habits that seem impossible for you to break? Oftentimes, the things that we struggle with the most, we wouldn't wish on our worst enemy. But there's something interesting about the demon of lust, which is it really wants you to take everyone down with you. More than anything else, it just wants you to take everything down with you. Some things just want you to take care of yourself, in a sense. But this one really pushes to take people with you. It says, would you place other souls where when they would pray to God, unholy desires would strive for the victory instead? And where such desires will make it tenfold harder to overcome in the battle of life. Have you become so regardless of souls that you will implant in them the corruptible seed that all their life long will bear its corruptible fruit? All their life long. You have a responsibility to protect the people around you. And if you choose to bring someone into your sin, their blood is on your hands. And you will have to beg God for that forgiveness and hope that you can forgive yourself. Because I have been there, where I've had to beg God to forgive myself for representing God in a wrong way to somebody that I know, if they had just had the truth, would have been okay. But instead, I stood there and I said I was a Seventh-day Adventist Christian and presented them and gifted them the gift that was given to me in the demon of lust by my own decisions. Hosea 4:6 says, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. A lot of people leave it there. But the next part of that says, because thou hast rejected knowledge. So everyone who has been sitting in this room now has a choice. You can reject knowledge, or you can accept it and be transformed. Because when you don't know, God winks. But when you do know, you feel it in here. There's something in there that is telling you what is right and what is wrong. Do not be like the sinful people of Israel and heed the warning of Hosea 4:6 and don't reject knowledge. It will save you a whole lot of heartache. Question 8, last question here. But God has a plan. What blessings, and there are so many, does God give to those who run from lustful desires and follow him. Crown of life. James chapter 1, verse 12 says, "Blessed is the man that endureth temptation." It's going to be there. It will forever be there. Until Jesus comes back, you will be tempted. But it says, "Blessed is the man that endureth temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord hath promised to them that love him." Enduring temptation and loving him are together. Without one, you cannot have the other. And there's your crown. The next one is wisdom of God. God will give you a clear mind. He will remove the scales from your eyes. You will no longer be blind or be protected from becoming blind. Proverbs 2, 3-5 says, "Yea, if thou criest after knowledge." Here, it doesn't say if you just ask once or twice and then forget about it and never ask again. It says, if you cry after knowledge and lift this up thy voice for understanding, if thou seekest her, wisdom, as silver, and searchest for her as for hid treasures, then shalt thou understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. It will be yours. You will have everything you desire. God has already laid out a plan for you to be blessed for all eternity. You just have to accept it. The last one is peace. And this is the one that I think is more tangible at the moment. It's almost the first thing that comes when you realize and you give this up. And you ask God to take the hooks of sin that you have placed in yourself out of you. It's peace. It says, this is the words of Jesus, says, "Peace I live with you. My peace I give to you, unto you, not as the world giveth." Because that peace is very faulty. It says, "Give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid." When you're doing wrong and you're sinning against God, especially, and this is especially when you have knowledge, there's something that starts to churn in your mind. There's something that burns in your heart and in your mind that tells you what you're doing is wrong, and that is your conscience. That is the Holy Spirit trying to reach you every step of the way, and if you don't have that, you should be praying right now, because that means you may have seared your conscience from the God of heaven. That thing right there is the only reason I'm standing here today, because something wouldn't let me go. I was trying to push him away, to kick him to the curb and say, "I don't want you here anymore. Leave me alone. Move these thoughts and get them away from me. Let me do what I want to do." But he wouldn't let me go. And so I never had peace. I always had this deep pit in my stomach that I understood that what I was doing was not wrong, or was wrong. But when you come to him, he gives you a different kind of peace. The peace that is not so worried about getting what I think I need, but is just content to allow God to fill your cup more than you ever could. So marriage and courtship, friendships are beautiful things in the hands of God. They really are. When you trust, and you have to trust, that he will fill your heart and will provide everything, you just wait on him. Wait on him. I made a decision finally, after years saying, okay, fine. I give up the attempt to try and get the things that I want to get. I said, "Lord, if you want me to be like Paul, I'll never get married." Now, I didn't want to pray that prayer. I didn't like to pray that prayer. I didn't want that to be true, but I said, if that is what you want, I will do it. And I surrendered it all by his power and his grace. And 3 months later, I met Emmeline. And now we're here today. So God will give you, I'm not saying it's going to happen after 3 months. It might never happen. You might be Paul. I'm just saying that. Don't come to me like, "Hey, you said it'll happen in 3 months. It's been like 6 years. What happened?" I don't know. You might be Paul. But what I'm saying is the surrender opens the door for blessings, for great things. And we'll end on this quote, because this is the result of that courtship, that relationship, that marriage. It says the family tie is the closest, the most tender and sacred of any on the earth. It was designed to be a blessing to mankind. And it is a blessing wherever the marriage covenant is entered into intelligently, in the fear of God, and with due considerations for its responsibilities. Those who are contemplating marriage should consider what will be the character and influence of the home they are founding. As they become parents, a sacred trust is committed to them. Upon them depends in a great measure the well-being of their children in this world and their happiness in the world to come. Your example to your children determines their life. If you give them a faulty example, you can expect faulty results. To a great extent, they determine both the physical and moral stamp that the little ones receive, and upon the character of the home depends the condition of society. Our society today is so degraded and so faulty and so disgusting because the parents in the home are destroyed. Because the divorce rate is 50-something%, because every other day you hear a new story of someone's parents who broke up and now they have to figure out whose house they're going to be on Sunday and when they're going to go visit dad and when they're going to go visit mom, and that creates nothing but trauma. And the series that I would ask all of you, if you have the time to watch, is called Spiritual Warfare from David N.G. He mentions that divorce is the direct opening for demons to enter into the home and into the children, because it shatters a beautiful thing of God and it breaks something in the child. I should know that more than most. It says, I don't even know where I finished off. It says, the weight of each family's influence will tell in the upward or the downward scale. Love is beautiful. I am not anti-love. Love is amazing. But this is what it really is. It's a precious gift, which we do receive from Jesus. Pure and holy affection is not a feeling. It is a principle. So you've heard, or maybe you've had experience of, you were with someone for however long, maybe even years. And all of a sudden it gets to the end of that relationship and you're like, man, I never want to see that person again. I hope you do bad. I hope you do terrible. I don't want to see anything. That's how it ends. And so I ask you the question, is that love? No, because it was a fleeting little feeling that when tested and tried just dissipated. True love, true principle is when no matter what that person does in life, you look at them and you say, I hope you do so much better than me. I hope you find God. I hope you are in such a beautiful way, if that were to be the case. But hopefully that love would turn into a marriage covenant and a relationship and would blossom into something so beautiful. Those who are actuated by true love are neither unreasonable nor blind. Taught by the Holy Spirit, they love God supremely. Without that, there is no definition of love. After that, if there is no love God supremely, what you have is infatuation and their neighbor as themselves. I thank you all for the time to sit here and to mention these things. And I understand that they're not always beautiful things and lovely things. They feel so good to hear, but that is the point. That God has given us truths to save us. And that we have seen time and time again that this sin is the thing that is degrading so many people. And so if we're to protect our young ones, if we're to protect ourselves, if we're to protect anyone that we can meet who may be struggling with this, we have to know these things and to share them. God bless. Amen.